Hey guys, today I have something a little bit different. I'm actually going to be doing a voice commentary, and basically we're going to be making French bread, and then out of that French bread we're going to be making grilled cheese sandwiches with tomato bisque. And so that's going to start with some unbleached all-purpose flour, and then you're going to mix in some salt. You can sift that together if you want. I just used a whisk. And then to a third cup of room temperature water, I'm going to add some yeast, and then whisk that together as well. And then after you leave that for about 5 minutes, it's going to get nice and frothy like this. And that's how basically you're ready to go on. And then you're going to add that yeast mixture into the flour that you mixed the salt into earlier, along with about 1.25 cups of room temperature water. Now, the water that I'm using is room temperature because I'm going to be doing a bit of a slower rise to develop more flavor. If you want it to be done faster, you could use warm water. And then I'm going to stir that together using, I don't know, whatever this stiff plastic spatula is. You can use a wooden spoon if you want, or just use your hands. But that's more messy, and I don't really like cleaning my hands. So I prefer using this tool, even though I don't really know what it's called. I think it came with my food processor. And basically, I just like to stir it together before I put it in my stand mixer, because it prevents the flour from flying everywhere when you start mixing with the dough hook. Speaking of which, we're gonna attach that dough hook right now, and basically mix this together on low speed until it comes together into a ball. The ratio that I'm using here, 1 pound of flour to the 1.25 cups of water. I think there might be too much water, or my flour is, I don't know, too wet or something, but I had to add a lot more flour than the original ratio that I was planning on using. So I'm gonna put in the recipe to use 1 pound of flour, because I don't know, everybody's flour might be different, so it's probably safer to start with a wetter dough and just add flour like I'm doing here. But I'm not showing each addition of flour, but in between each cut I'm adding flour, and you can see that the dough is starting to pull together more. And once it reaches this stage where it's pulling away from the sides of the bowl, you've basically added enough flour. It still will be really sticky, so I'm warning you now, this is a very sticky bread dough, but I think that's kind of necessary to get the chewy texture at the end. You don't want the bread to get tough, and that'll happen if you add too much flour. So basically, once it's reached that stage, you can pull it off the hook using the plastic spatula, wooden spoon, or even like floured fingers. And I'm just going to wrap that in plastic wrap and let it rise for about 2 hours until it almost triples in size. And this is what it looks like now. And as you can see, the sun kind of came out. It was pretty cloudy and raining when I made this. But yeah, this is the same day later when the sun came out, and you just kind of want to deflate it using a wooden spoon, your fingers, or a plastic spatula tool. And yeah, you just deflate it in the same bowl and just cover it and let it rise again. So this is twice risen, and I think that develops more flavor. And yeah, just let it triple in size again, and then deflate the dough for a second time, and try to add enough flour so that you can shape it into a ball, because I'm just making one big loaf out of this. If you want, you could use the same dough and make smaller rolls out of it, or I don't know if this would make good baguettes, but you could probably use a stove for that as well. But since I'm making sandwiches, I'm just gonna make one big loaf. And don't pay any attention to my loaf shaping form. I know it's not the most ideal in the world, and like I said, this dough is really sticky, so I tried to roll together the bottom and make it like a seamless ball, but that didn't really pan out too well because the dough kept wanting to stick to my hands, so it wasn't really ball-like. I didn't show it here, but after I placed the dough in the pan, I went back with my plastic spatula and tucked the sides under. And I tried doing the first reveal without turning the lights on, and it kind of looked like the dough was already cooked, so I did a second one with the lights on. not that that's really relevant, but yeah, I'm gonna block the shot here with my arm, but basically I'm scoring the top with a sharp razor, because I kind of screw this up with my knives when I do it, but I think it turned out pretty well with the razor. I'm just doing a cross pattern, and I think that helps the dough rise better in the oven. And then I have a foil tray at the bottom of my oven that I'm going to fill with boiling water. Push that in, and then place my bread in. Now don't do what I did here, where I left the top rack in, and also before you put the bread in, you want to spray that with water, and also, I don't know, ruin the focus again. I used a balloon mister because I don't actually have a spray bottle, but yeah, when you put your bread in, like I was saying earlier, don't do what I did. I left the top rack in the oven, and then realized that a little bit later, as you'll see here once the camera focuses again. Yeah, so just remember to take your top rack out, because I don't know, the bread might rise there, or it'll probably bake better without that in there. So just leave the top rack out of the oven. And yeah, I didn't mention the temperature earlier. I think I did this at 450 or 425. I think 450, yeah. But depending on I don't know, your oven, it's gonna look it's gonna take different amount of time. So and I actually don't remember how long it took to bake this loaf, but you just want it to look like that. I don't know, golden brown color. And now we're gonna move on to the soup. So that starts by dicing up about like a cup of onion, a cup of diced onion, and 3 cloves of garlic. You're also going to need about half a cup of celery, but I had already chopped that earlier and just have it frozen in a bag. So I have that in a separate bowl. And I'm just roughly chopping these ingredients because the soup is going to get blended later, so it doesn't really matter how precisely you chop this in. I also decided to turn on the stove in the middle of, turn on the stove light in the middle of filming to make that, I don't know, more easy to see, I guess. So basically we're going to sweat the onions and celery in about a tablespoon of olive oil over medium-low heat with a pinch of salt for about 5-7 minutes until they look soft like this. And then once they reach this point, you can add in the garlic and stir that around for a bit. And once the garlic is heated through, you can add in the chicken stock. I use about 2 cups of chicken stock, and then just 2 cups of regular water to make about a quart of liquid. And here I'm adding my secret ingredient, quote unquote, which is some mushroom powder. I took some dried shiitake mushrooms from the Asian grocery store and basically just blitzed those into a powder. And yeah, I'm gonna add about 28 ounces of crushed tomatoes, and I'm hiding the label even though you already saw it because I'm not getting sponsored, but you know, whatever. So yeah, the soup is gonna look pretty ugly because it's not, you know, blended yet, but don't worry, once it's blended it'll look perfect. And I'm gonna season up the soup with some black pepper, some paprika, and also a pinch of salt now, but I'm gonna do most of the seasoning salt wise later, so I'm not really sure why I added any here. And just, you know, stir those spices in and bring it up to a simmer. And you could skim off this foam now or later, or never if you really don't care. But once it comes up to a simmer, you can add in the rice. And then this is what the bread looks like after a day, because I had actually baked the bread the day before and it actually got kind of soft, so wasn't really a big deal, honestly. The crust was crispier the day before, and I think the sandwiches probably would have turned out better fresh. But yeah, I'm basically just gonna slice those into sandwich-sized pieces. And also somebody sampled the ends of the loaf. I'm not really sure who that was, but yeah. At this point, I'm gonna add the salt to the soup, as well as some sugar, and go back in with the or sorry, go in with the immersion blender for the first time. Kind of getting ahead of myself. I went back with the immersion blender later, as you'll see. But yeah, just basically blend that together until it's smooth. It's gonna take I don't know, about a minute or so until everything's nice and I don't know, silky. I guess you're going for a kind of thick texture, and you could you should probably taste it at this point, although it doesn't have the final ingredient, which is the cream. So as far as milk products for this go, for a bisque you usually want to use heavy whipping cream. I didn't have any, so I used some table cream that was previously frozen, and that's why it was really chunky. So I figured the best way to get the soup looking nice again was to go back in with the immersion blender. So that's the reason why I blended the soup twice. Not that that really makes a big difference, but yeah, that's kind of why I did what I did. And then once the cream is added in, you can taste again for salt, and this is the point where you should finalize the seasoning for the soup. And once that's blended together, the soup is done, and now we're gonna actually assemble the grilled cheese. So here I'm brushing my sandwich pieces with butter and just drop it on the grill. And here I was thinking of just cooking 3 sandwiches at once, and that's why I have that piece of bread pushed to the edge of the grill. But I kind of come to my senses and push that to the center. And I also don't have the kind of cheese that I wanted for the sandwich. I just have mozzarella and Monterey Jack, but it was honestly still delicious, but it wasn't exactly the cheese that I wanted in the sandwich. I wanted, I don't know, a nice mix of orange and white, you know, sharp and mild cheeses, but there was no cheddar for this sandwich, unfortunately. But yeah, I moved the bread to the middle and just did one sandwich at a time. I added the Monterey Jack and the mozzarella cheese, and yeah, just brush the top with some melted butter, as you can see here. And then the sandwich is pretty big, and also I'm not sponsored by George Foreman either. Apparently I'm just a sucker for product placement, I guess. And then I'm just gonna weigh down the top with a skillet, and then after about 5 minutes the sandwich is probably ready. I could have let it go a little bit further than this. Also, ideally you'll be using cheese that's not frozen, because in my family we like to grate the cheese ahead of time and just store it in Ziploc bags in the freezer. It's kind of hard to put the frozen cheese in, and that's basically it. You get nice toasty sandwich and delicious tomato bisque. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.